Good morning, Peter. How are you today?
Anybody there?
Yeah, this is Donna. Can you hear me?
Shannon, you there?
This is Donna. Can you hear me? Good morning, Peter. Can you hear me? Hi, Peter. Hi, Peter. Okay, you can't hear me.
Don, I do not hear. Oh, hold on. Donna, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me? I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Donna, do you hear me now?
I do hear you. Do
All
you
right.
hear me?
Oh, Donna Mullins. I know the voice. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm fine. I was on mute. So.
Yeah. Oh, okay. No problem. Yeah. Shannon. Shannon unfortunately was called away. Her father had a seizure, and she had to.
Oh, I wonder why she's not responding.
So I'm going to be your cohort for this
Lucky
one.
me. Lucky me. Now, do you see me? Or
I do see you. You are beautiful as always.
all right, I don't see you.
No, you should see. Here, I can put my. You
Okay,
should.
now I see. Now I see.
Yeah.
Oops. I see myself in both now.
Okay, so you should be able to see me now.
I see you now.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
then you disappeared.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry I disappeared. I'm
All
still.
right, now I see you now.
Okay.
Oh, and then it disappeared again. That's
Wow,
odd.
that's odd.
All right, I see you.
Now I
And
see you. Now I don't.
I see you. I see the wood paneling. Now you're gone again.
We're
That's
playing
odd.
this game. Okay.
I see you now. Nope. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Huh.
I see your. Yep. Now you're gone. That's all right.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
how many people do we have? Like it looked like only 10 people or so.
Yeah, I think it's a small group. I've got the attendee window open so I can let folks in as they come. What we will do is I will very briefly say an antitrust statement.
All right.
Tamika will, Tramika, I'm sorry. Tramika will give a brief overview of your bio, and then I will turn it over to you. Do you have slide presentation that you want to drive, or you want me to drive? How do you want to do it?
I can do it
Okay.
if you have access. I don't see it up. Did you put it up yet?
Yeah, I did. You should be able to. I've given a screen share to all panelists.
I don't. Minimize. I don't.
Let me try this other.
No, there's nothing on the screen.
Okay, down at the bottom where it says share screen.
I don't see that.
If you hover down at the bottom, there is the mute, stop video, participants,
Yes.
Q&A
Okay.
pulse. You should see share screen.
Something's happening. I clicked on it.
Okay, when you click on share screen, then you
No,
should.
no, something's. I clicked on the little symbol that was in the lower right. So it's something's happening. Ask me something. Zoom. Hi, I'm the Bolt Zoom virtual assistant. Need help? Well, that's a virtual assistant. That's not what I want.
Yeah, once you click on the share screen, then it should pull up the screens that you want to share. If you have like multiple,
I don't see share screen.
huh. Okay, let me, let me make you a host.
Okay, see if that helps. Okay, it says, see, okay. Okay, hang up a minute. All right, I see, it looks like Tramika in the lower speaker view. I see it says you are now the host. I saw
Okay.
that.
All right, so now that you are the host, you should be able to see the screen sharing button down at the bottom.
I say share screen. Yes, I see it.
Okay, and then click on whichever screen you want to share.
Well, I see you in one.
You want to share whichever screen you have your PowerPoint on.
Yeah, but I don't have it. Oh. Oh, I thought you guys had the PowerPoint.
Well,
Oh,
I do. That's why I was wondering, did you want me to do the
oh,
screen?
why don't you do it then? Because I don't have it.
Okay.
I mean, I have it, but it's not. I don't know how I would see it this way. So you take care of that.
Yeah. Let me find it here. Because I believe Tramika sent it to me.
I think Shannon, Tramika.
Well, everybody is Shannon today except for you.
Right. Okay, something's kind of, here it is. All right, I see it.
Okay, you see it now?
Yep. No, I don't see me, so it's okay. I'd rather see it. Okay.
You just need to see me.
Well, I don't see you. I'm viewing. I see view options.
Tramika, do you see me?
Okay, I see you now. All right, I minimized it, so it's fine. Okay.
Okay, so now whenever you're ready, just tell me and I'll click the slide and move it along.
Yep. So let me just so do test. Move one ahead. See if it works. Yep, that works. Okay. Go back. You're ahead.
Yeah.
Oops. Now I see they're ahead.
Good morning, Tramika. How are you today? You're on mute.
There she is. I don't hear her. You hear me okay?
I can hear you fine, yes.
All right.
You hear me?
I
Yes.
can hear you now, yes, ma'am.
I am sorry, I have been telling you both. I apologize for getting on late. I've been having technical difficulties.
I have been living in IT hell since August 14th. I
This
hope
is-
to recover soon.
I hope to recover. This is horrible. Printer not working. All of a sudden.
First, my internet kept going out. They're doing work up at the end of the road, and so I kept losing access to the internet. Finally, Xfinity came out. They replaced all of my wires. I still kept losing internet. They finally sent me a new box. Then I realized that I was still running Windows 7 and half of my applications weren't working because they're all set for Windows 10 now. So I had to take my computer and get her a facelift, and I took it and they loaded Windows 7 and they forgot to put Office on it for me. So
Oh,
now,
it doesn't end, does it?
oh God, I'm telling you, I said, I've had to laugh. Otherwise I was just going to cry.
Good. So now I do tend to speak quickly. If I do, one of you interrupt me. And hopefully we'll get some questions throughout, so I just won't be listening to myself.
Okay. It looks like that Lisa Reagan and Mary King and Renee Blizzard has joined us. Ladies, can you hear me? Or do they join in listen mode? Do you know?
Yes, you have to unmute them.
Oh,
Renee says she can hear. Mary says she can hear. Good.
okay.
But we just can't hear them, I guess.
Yeah, well, I don't know how to unmute them, so. Okay, great.
Tamika, congratulations for becoming secretary.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes. I'm just going to step away and refill the coffee jug.
Well,
Do what you need to do.
right on.
Peter, part of my technical difficulty was printing your bio.
Oh,
So,
it's a long one, so maybe just cut it back to a few sentences. Yeah, I worked, starting out of law school, I worked for U.S. Customs and private lawyer for 25 years, assisting importers, exporters, the whole thing.
I think I'm going to cut it down to what I had an opportunity to write down.
All right.
Try to write as much as I could.
And I'm a member of the AIFBA as well.
That's been right, and I want to mention that as well. I'll just start the first half with you being the chair of the U.S. Customs and International Trade Law Group
Yep.
at the law firm Gary Robinson, and that you're
Gray Robinson. Gray Robinson.
great.
Yep,
Every
Gray
time
Robinson.
I look at that, I say Gary's.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I just came back. Did I hear that all AIFBA members get a discount since Peter's a member?
Always. Always. I won't fly first class, I'll just fly coach. That's the discount.
Okay, great.
By the way, I have started flying again. I was in Philadelphia. I just came back from San Juan, and in 2 weeks I'm going to Denver. So
Yeah, I saw that you were headed over to, I think the last time I saw you on Facebook, you were headed over to Puerto Rico. How's the flying now? Pretty good?
very easy. JetBlue is a superb airline. Well, the middle aisle is empty. Otherwise, the plane was pretty full.
Yeah.
Everybody wore masks the whole time. They give you, you don't have a choice of food. They give you a little bottle of water and some crackers and a wipe, and that's it, in a plastic bag. And, they get TV and JetBlue, so that's nice. And this
Okay.
San Juan, people were still going to the office in San Juan Customs.
Yeah.
And, they had a hurricane, they had an earthquake, but business is back to normal there.
Okay, we have just a few more minutes.
Donna, Peter and I were talking about my technical difficulties with printing this morning.
Yes.
So it will be an abbreviated bio based upon the amount I was able to write down.
Hey, that's fine. If you read his entire bio, it would take up the whole. So. Peter's a man that gets around.
A little bit.
Yeah, yeah. You're a great resource to have too, Peter. Thank you very much for being a part of it.
I followed you as well, Donna. You were out there educating people how to comply with the law. I don't want anybody to be perfect because then there'll be nothing for lawyers to do.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I make sure I leave some out there for them to continue to learn.
Well, the truth is, I think customs is more aggressive now than ever. So
yeah, I believe so. I believe so. We actually I've moved the ABCs of Customs Brokerage to an online format now, and it's been very well received by the trade community. In fact, this cohort, I have folks from all over the country that are joining. So it's been really nice to be able to expand it just out of the local Atlanta market.
Right. Well, that's what people still don't understand. I think, you don't need a necessarily broker locally. You can get one through remote location filing. And the same with customs law. It's the same with your JFK or Long Beach or Miami. So I'm able to do what I do everywhere. And on the export side, the same thing. FMC, EIS, all that. But I do miss flying. I used to fly in a plane almost every week. Right, I miss that.
Yeah.
And my wife and I planned to go to Portugal and Italy, but obviously those trips were canceled.
Okay, we have just one more minute. I don't know if I have the registration list. I'm sure I probably do somewhere. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8.
Get to the email.
Yeah, you sent it to me.
It's about 11 people.
Yeah.
Ready to roll.
Renee, what I know about technology is I period, T period.
Ooh, got that right.
After that, I am done. Okay, it is 11 o'clock. So in the interest of everyone's coveted time these days, we'd like to go ahead and get started. Hello, my name is Donna Mullins. I'm sitting in for Shannon Witt. So when you see Shannon's name under my face, I'm not Shannon. Shannon had to be called away on a family emergency. So if you're a praying individual, please keep her in your prayers. And I would like to just say that the AIFBA works on the antitrust laws. The association will not tolerate any discussion of prices, any type of production shutdowns or cohorts or anything of that nature. And I think you've all probably heard the antitrust statement sufficiently amount of times to know just don't talk about anything you're not supposed to talk about. And with that, I will turn it over to Tramika, so she can introduce our guest speaker today. Tramika?
Good morning. My name is Tramika Fernandez, and I am the secretary of AIFBA. You will note that my name also shows up as Shannon. It takes two of us this morning to fill her shoes. So we're working together just to support her as she focuses on her family. This morning, we have the honor of hearing from Peter Quinter, who is the chief of the United States Customs and International Trade Law Group at the law firm of Gray Robinson. Mr. Quinter is a member of AIFBA and a frequent lecturer on import, export, and logistics compliance. With 30 years in the business of helping customs brokers and freight forwarders, including the first 5 years as an attorney for the U.S. Customs in Miami, Mr. Quinter has extensive experience and knowledge in all aspects of federal law enforcement by customs and multiple PGAs. During today's webinar, Mr. Quinter will discuss how to submit a ruling request to customs and the legal obligations of a company to keep its FMC license. With that, I welcome you, Peter Quinter.
All right, thank you very much. So, okay. All right, so a couple of comments. One, the picture you see of me on the screen with my suit on, I have not worn a suit in 6 months. So things have changed under COVID. The 30 years I've been a customs and trade lawyer, I'm not so sure how helpful I was those first 5 years because I was working as an attorney with the Chief Counsel's Office of U.S. Customs Service back then. So tended to be adverse to both forwarders and brokers back then. Of course, last 25 years, very helpful to the forwarders brokers who are my clients and referral sources. So thank you to the officers of the AIFBA, and let's talk the next hour about both two topics. One is ruling requests to U.S. Customs Border Protection, and the other is FMC licensing. Donna mentioned something about antitrust, so that is so relevant when we get to the FMC action. What we had is a freight forwarder in New Orleans and Miami who conspired with other freight forwarders to control pricing. He was not just sued, he was criminally indicted, the owner of the company, as well as the company, it's public information, and pled guilty, the corporation and the individual. And of course, you can imagine the FMC, when they heard of that, they were not too happy. And eventually, the FMC revoked the license of the corporation. I challenged that, and after administrative ruling, the revocation stood. So we'll get into that later on. But let's talk about the discussion today, getting back to basics, CBP rulings and FMC licensing. I thought this would naturally follow last month's presentation, which discussed country of origin for marketing purposes versus country of origin for Section 301 duties. Under the Trump administration, especially, as you're probably aware, there's an encouragement to try and do business without involving China. Nevertheless, China is still the major trading partner with the United States, so you often have products made in China originally, are then transported to another country, Vietnam, Korea, Taiwan, etc., processed into a new and different article of commerce and shipped to the United States. So the question is, really, is that product to be marked country of origin China or the second country? CBP is very aggressive at stopping, examining, and detaining, seizing, issuing penalties for merchandise they think is falsely marked in country of origin or falsely declared by the importer to CBP as the proper country of origin. And that's keeping me busy, especially nowadays. You probably heard the concept of transshipments. You know about anti-dumping and countervailing duties, especially on Chinese products. You know about Section 301, Trump tariffs on Chinese products. And then the Section 201, Section 232, products, steel, aluminum, washing machines, photovoltaic cells from all over the world. So it's a busy time for not just customs lawyers, but if you're in the import-export business or logistics through a broker or forwarder. It's an interesting time. All right, next slide. Done. All right, questions. I love questions. This is live, but obviously I can't see you, even though I guess you can see me. We have a chat box.
Yes.
If you have questions or comments, put something in the chat box and we'll respond to it during the presentation, because 45 minutes from now, you're going to forget your question and it won't be relevant. So during the time, feel free to ask a question. We know you're asking questions on behalf of the association, not necessarily on behalf of you personally or your company. So it's okay. I don't have to respond to any individual question with reference to your company. We know it's generic. Okay, next slide, please. Let's talk about ruling requests. What are ruling requests? So those of you who have been around for a long time like me, remember you could just go down to your local port director's office, talk to the local entry officer or port director, and maybe you show them a sample of something and you would ask them, how do you think this should be classified informally? How do you think this should be valued? What do you think the country of origin marking should be? Those kind of questions we used to do all the time with our local CBP offices. Nowadays, especially into COVID, you're not going down to your local office, and CBP is a lot less likely to give you an informal opinion about how something should be declared to CBP. Plus, the import specialists no longer report to the port director. They're all part of these centers of excellence and expertise. So the person you used to go to for one kind of product, let's say electronics, may now work for an agriculture center. So it's become much more complex. The normal way to do it, the formal way to request an opinion from U.S. Customs and Border Protection is through an electronic ruling request. They went electronic many years ago. It used to be we would submit them by paper, but that's not the way to do it anymore. Electronic ruling requests are submitted either to the New York Seaport or to Customs headquarters in Washington, D.C., the Office of Regulations and Rulings, for a legal opinion. Now, there's an update I put on your screen from the CBP. When you submit a ruling request, often you submit a sample of the product that you want a classification determination. Customs will still accept a physical sample, but they don't want it. And don't forget, just like you, Customs is no longer located at the Customs office. So even if you send it to the New York Seaport, which is the World Trade Center, they're gonna end up sending it by FedEx from there to the home office of the CBP National Import Specialist. And nobody really wants to do that. So Customs is encouraging people to not send samples, but to send diagrams, graphics of the product that you're talking about. So this is the warning for CBP, telling you to submit the photographs or videos of the product instead of a sample. Next slide. Okay, what goes into a ruling request? Here's the basic information. Obviously, it's in writing. You have to address it properly to CBP. You have to put your proper contact on. Now, CBP rulings can be submitted by anybody. Importers, customs brokers, customs lawyers are the three basic entities that submit rulings. It used to be we would be sure to get a ruling back within 30 days of submission. That doesn't happen. If you get it back within 30 days, that's rare. More likely, it can be 60 to 120 days after you submit your ruling request to CBP when you actually get your written ruling back. It's just the nature of the pandemic that's going on. So obviously, in the ruling, if it's a tariff classification one, a basic one, you suggest what the tariff classification would be and the reason why you believe that tariff classification is appropriate. And hopefully, you write it in such a way, CBP just copies your ruling request, puts it into ruling, signs it, and sends it back to you. That's what I hope in all of my ruling requests to CBP. And what I do is a little differently than most lawyers. I want to know who receives my request at CBP. I want to know the name and contact information of the National Import Specialist assigned my case. Because I want to talk to that person. I want my case, my client's case, to jump to the top of the stack. So I'd rather get a 30-day response rather than 120 days. I want to make sure that the National Import Specialist not only receives it, but understands what I've written. And oftentimes we engage in conversation over the phone or by email, and you get more attention. That's one of my little secrets I'm sharing with the association. So next slide. Okay, so there are all kinds of reasons to request a ruling from CBP. One of them, of course, the basic one, is the classification ruling to determine which HTS to classify your product. Remember, under reasonable care, is the importer's responsibility, and therefore the broker's responsibility, to make sure the tariff classification is declared properly to CBP. I represent a lot of brokers who obtain from their importer the tariff number. Turns out customs disagrees with that tariff number, and then there's a lot of finger pointing going on. The broker says to the importer, "You told me to declare it this way." And the importer says to the broker, "But you should have known that was not appropriate. It should have been a different one. You're the expert as a customs broker." And then of customs, they're pointing the finger at the importer for penalty, for false classification, and they're pointing the finger at the broker for negligence and their potential broker penalty of $30,000. So I always encourage, if there's any question about how something is to be classified, marked, etc., just submit a ruling request. It's good to get a legal opinion from someone like me. You can almost guarantee that's accurate, but nothing's better than getting customs' own written ruling confirming what a private lawyer might say or what a customs broker might say. So in a classification, I've listed the basic requirements for any submission: a description of the product, its components, the principle of use in the United States, any technical designation. If there's illustrative literature from an independent source, a national organization of some sort, that's always good to have. Submit to CBP. Okay, next slide. Okay, besides tariff classification, these are the other three basics, reasons why you submit a ruling. You want to know the country of origin. As I told you before, CBP is extremely aggressive in identifying, examining, and rejecting entries of merchandise where there's a false country of origin declared. Even if it's not false, customs often holds cargo while they evaluate the country of origin, and brokers get requests for additional documents, and sometimes the import specialist, even if the entry is made in Atlanta, the import specialist, because of the CEE, could be in Seattle or Portland or someplace, is asking you questions about that product. And then you as the broker need to contact your importer and collect enough documentation to prove the product was made in the country you said it was made. That's customs. So in the country of origin, you want to put the source material, not just the final product. All the components of a product is important. Trade programs. If you are declaring something is under a free trade agreement, it's coming duty-free, you want to be able to justify that to customs. When I say you, I mean the customs broker has an obligation. A lot of times people say it's the importer's problem. Customs is focused on the importer. Yes, but as I said, if customs disagrees with whether or not an imported product qualifies, let's say the Colombian Free Trade Agreement or Panama or Israel, you name it, the importer tends to blame the customs broker, and I don't want that to ever happen. I want the broker to educate its import client to say, listen, if you think it falls under a free trade agreement, don't just give me a certificate of origin. I want you to be confident that the information in that certificate of origin is accurate and complete. And a lot of times the importers don't know, they don't seem to care sometimes. But they should care because CBP, take it from me, is issuing penalties, they're declining duty-free entries, and then they're penalizing the importer for falsely declaring the merchandise is subject to a free trade agreement. So same with country of origin and marking. You've got to know that the product, just because it was shipped from a country doesn't mean it was made there. On the other hand, products are complex with different components, and may have started in China and been processed in Germany. So maybe it became a product of Germany. Brokers can do that evaluation, obviously customs lawyers, and of course CBP can issue a ruling on those kinds of questions. The next slide. Okay, so as I said earlier, we used to do rulings by paper. Customs doesn't want paper. It's still allowed, but I don't know anybody who does it. You have to do it by electronically. This is the screenshot, and you submit rulings through ACE, so many of you should be familiar with this. They either go to, like I said, New York, or depending upon a special requirement, like a trade agreement, you submit it to a different branch within Customs headquarters regulations rulings. So this is the screenshot that shows you how to get into the e-ruling template. Next slide. Okay, so this is, I'm just clicking through the slides. This is what I do. I filed hundreds of rulings like sort of a year under my name. And what I do oftentimes, this is a little different what I do compared to most lawyers. Most lawyers say if I'm drafting the ruling, then it has to be submitted under Peter Quinter, Gray Robinson Law Firm. Not so. I often draft a ruling request and submit it on behalf of my client, whoever the client is. It could be the importer or the customs broker. And that's what I do all the time. So here's the different kinds of, you have to click on the link, classification, marking, country of origin, free trade agreement, or drawback. Next slide. Okay, this is, again, another screenshot that I look at all the time. And this one, again, you click through and type the information that's required. This is your contact information. So when CBP has a question, who to contact, then who to call. It's a pretty simple, self-explanatory form. You obviously have to certify that you've not submitted the same request to CBP previously. There's no pending litigation in the Court of International Trade or another court, or you haven't somehow already got an answer and you're trying to appeal it through the ruling system. It doesn't work. So you can't, for example, submit a protest and a ruling request in the same issue. Customs doesn't want to deal with that. All right, next question, or next slide. Okay, and this is, again, the screenshot. You're describing what the issue is, what the product is. Your suggested answers are all in here. Next slide. Okay, again, this is, I've completed this. I put my name in there. So next slide. Okay, and it's the same, some more questions. Now notice on the right lower side, attachments. So what I do is I write out a ruling, and I don't just put a sentence or two. I write out an actual ruling request. It could be several pages long. We're going to see an example in a few minutes. And you can upload the Word document. You can upload a PDF, I would do. You would upload pictures, anything you want from the internet. You can upload that as part of your ruling request. I do it all the time. It's easy. All right, next slide. Then you certify it and sign it. So, all right, next slide. Okay, so again, this is a screenshot from the CBP website. I'm on the website all the time, seems like. This describes what a ruling is versus a legal decision. A ruling is something you are asking for, whereas legal decision might be something that customs imposes on you, whether you want it or not. And a ruling is an excellent way to proceed. It's just part of reasonable care. What I'll do, and this is another little tidbit people don't know. Once you submit a ruling, if you talk to the National Import Specialist or the Attorney in Regulations rulings, and you get the feeling that that person is not going to decide it in your favor, you have the option to withdraw your ruling so you don't get anything official from U.S. Customs. I've done that many times. Sometimes they take a chance and say, let's just try this and see what happens. So most people don't realize you can withdraw a ruling request before, obviously, they issue the formal ruling. So I've done that, and most people don't know you can do that, so now you do. Okay, next.
Peter, I have a question.
Yeah.
If we've submitted a ruling and we don't communicate with the national import specialist, we don't know in advance if they're going to be in favor of our ruling or not.
That's right. That's right. And that's the mistake. I don't know why, this is part of Peter Quinter's procedure. I like people anyway, as you know, Donna. But I obviously want to talk to CBP. I want to talk to the decision maker who's going to sign off on my ruling. Rulings are obviously written by national import specialists. They're signed off by the director of the NIS in New York. And in Washington, it's signed off by the branch chief. I want to talk to the person who's actually writing the ruling and the decision maker. And I want to make sure that person, those people are on board with what I'm arguing. And if not, I try and persuade them to my position. And if they're not going to be persuaded, then I tell the client, hey, listen, maybe we want to withdraw this. So that's how it works.
So I know that, once you submit the ruling request, you get, a notice back saying that it has been assigned to, and they give you the name of whoever it's assigned to.
Yes.
How long should someone wait after they've submitted that request and received the notification of who it's been assigned to reach out and contact that import specialist?
Right. So once you submit a ruling, within minutes, you get an automatic notification.
Right.
Then it's been acknowledged, and you can get your ruling number assigned. And oftentimes, if it goes to the NIS in New York, you get the name of the import specialist. I don't wait. I'm like 24 hours, and I'm on it.
Okay.
Because, like I said, I'm a little different than most lawyers. I'm still a type A personality. I want my clients to get the attention. I want their file to be top of the list, top of the pile. And after 30 years, I know most of the national import specialists in New York. And if, by the way, here's another little tidbit. If you haven't been there, many of you don't want to leave your houses. I understand that. But one day, when this pandemic thing is over, go to New York City, go to the New World Trade Center. CBP is on the top, I forget what floor they're on now, 60 something. It's gorgeous. You can see it's 360-degree windows. You can see all of Manhattan. You can see the Statue of Liberty. You can see Ellis Island. It's a magnificent view. So if you find an excuse to go, just do it. And you skip the line. There's a line for, tourists who just want to go to the top. But now there's a special line for CBP. So I recommend you do that. So Don, I get in there, I get in their face nicely, of course, as soon as possible.
Yeah, thanks for that tip.
Right. No problem. All right, so next slide. Okay, so this is what CROSS is. I want to make sure this is back to basics, the title of this seminar. So CROSS is the Customs Ruling Online Search System. Anytime you want to research tariff classification, country of origin, all the things we talked about, you go to either through ACE or the CBP website, right into CROSS. Whether you're a customs lawyer, a customs attorney, or a CBP employee, we all use the same system. So you look up in CROSS and you look for precedent where something similar or maybe even identical has occurred before, and you use that to support your argument in your ruling request to CBP. I do it all the time. I'm on CROSS all the time. You're going to type in my name, or find a couple of my rulings. So next slide. Okay, so just to show you how it goes, I typed in Quinter. You can type in names. You can type in import names, attorney names, your own name, tariff classification numbers. You can type in other ruling numbers, and there'll be a search. You search it, click search, and so here's came up a bunch of my rulings that have been issued by CBP that I requested. So, all right, let's click the next slide.
Okay, because we all know that I love asking questions.
Yes.
What should we do? I see you've got one here that says modifies.
Right.
So does that mean that the ruling classification may have changed and that?
Yes. Yes. So that's really important. So this was HQ 471535, which modified the 470154. So we know the higher number is more recent. So it modified a prior ruling that CBP issued. And by the way, here's another thing. I know customs officers think they're close to God, but not necessarily. They make mistakes too. So CBP sometimes modifies a prior ruling. It's like a court. You appeal to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court tells the lower court you were wrong. So customs national import specialists 5 years later might say, hey, the prior national import specialist who issued a ruling was wrong. And we are revoking a prior ruling or we're modifying a prior ruling. So just because you see a ruling from CBP, that doesn't mean that's the final answer. It may be it was wrong, and you have a set of facts and a great lawyer or broker who can argue that the prior ruling was wrong and you get a new ruling. So that's what I did here.
Okay, we have another question came in. This one actually isn't mine. It came from one of the attendees. Why are some HQ rulings and others NY rulings? What is the difference?
Yeah, excellent question. I should have addressed that. All right, so tariff classification rulings always go to New York, the New York rulings. Most other rulings, and we're going to get an example soon. So country of origin marking, value rulings go to Washington, go to an attorney in the Office of Regulations and Rulings. So there's the value branch. If you've got a value question, you submit your ruling directly to the branch chief of the value branch. If you've got a country of origin marking question, you submit it to the marking branch, the CBP headquarters. If you submit it through the new e-ruling system to New York, they will send it down to Washington. So why waste a month? So that's significant. So obviously you'll see the rulings on the screen. When it starts with NY, that's New York. It's issued by the National Import Specialist. When it's HQ, that's Washington, D.C. Regulations rulings issued by a lawyer for CBP. Good question, very good question. Okay, next slide.
Okay, just to follow up on one other question here real quick, Peter. A presentation was sent out, Peter's presentation was sent out to all attendees. I know that this is being recorded. How Shannon is going to make it available to the attendees, I am unsure. I'm sort of on stand-in, but we'll make sure that Shannon knows that there is a request that the webinar recording be shared. Okay, thank you, Peter.
My pleasure.
And Peter, this is Tramika. Just to stop you really briefly for a follow-up to Donna's question. It appears that when to the right-hand side where it says references, it appears that that is what you were referring to as referencing a previous ruling in your request. Is that the reference that is in that column for modifying?
The ruling reference is a summary of that ruling. The furthest right-hand column under related is where it says modifies and gives the prior ruling.
And the references does what you were saying?
The reference is a summary of the actual ruling, current ruling being issued. So it's a summary of where it says ruling category tariff number, that's a summary of it. And so, for example, the first one says the tariff classification of a girl's knit jacket from Hong Kong. That's what that ruling is all about. The second ruling says the tariff classification of an iPhone holder set from Taiwan. That's what that ruling is about. So again, when you search terms, you can use search. It's kind of like a Google search. You put in whatever term you want, and Customs will come up with a list of its rulings, which you then use to analyze and help you or your client properly document the entry, for admissibility, etc. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is where another example where I put in a ruling number and it came up with the ruling. And we're going to get into this one. This is one was just issued on August 13th, 2020. It's ruling reference, which is a description. It's a country of origin marking of certain hydraulic couplings. It references 1, 2, 3, 4 other prior rulings that CBP had issued. Okay, so next slide.
Yeah, Peter, here's a question. Under references, some of the rulings have a letter in front of them and some don't. For example, there's 2 that have an N and 2 that do not. What is the difference in those?
So the ones in the numbers, I'm not sure, but the N indicates those would be probably old ones, because those, remember I mentioned, I said years and years ago, before 9/11 and Homeland Security, CBP, individual ports used to issue rulings. So Port of Miami, Port of Atlanta, etc. So that probably refers to whatever port was issued before they went over to New York and Washington. All right, so next slide. Okay, so this is an actual ruling that I obtained just recently, August 13th, 2020. CBP, by the way, once they issue it to you within 30 days, it's posted to the public online. So I can share this with everybody. It's freely available, just like a court decision. So, and you can see in this slide, they even copied some of the images that I had included in my ruling request in their analysis. So in this case, it was a very fascinating case. It's a classic situation where one of the major components of these hydraulic couplings was made in China. And then it gets processed in 2 other countries. It was Germany, Poland, and I think it was Taiwan, maybe 3 countries. So you have to choose one country. It can't be a country of all 3 or 4 of those. So we did not want it to be China, of course. We don't want to pay the Trump tariff and every other regular tariff that's on Chinese products into the United States. We wanted the lower duty rate as possible. So we were able to put in, and this is the way I always set it up. I put in the facts. Basically, perfect. They copied my ruling request. So I put the facts in, I put the issues in, I put the conclusion in, and I say thank you. So this is a pretty good example of a ruling by CBP. And that's interesting, the time. You can see it, the first sentence says, this is in response to your letter dated March 30th, 2020, filed on behalf of my client in Australia. And the decision was not issued until August 13th. So, obviously it took several months for CBP to issue this ruling. Now you'll notice also, it's an HQ ruling. So it's from Washington, D.C. And again, because it's a country of origin marking question, you don't submit those to New York, you submit them directly to the branch chief for marketing in this case, in Washington, D.C. Okay? And it's assigned to one of her attorneys who ended up working with closely on this. My next slide.
Yeah, here's a question. You mentioned Trump tariffs. I know that there's also some Obama tariffs that were issued.
Yes.
Can one president remove another president's tariffs?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the courts already decided. It's the sole discretion of the President of the United States. The courts are not going to second guess. He calls it Trump tariff, so he's proud of it. He's the tariff man, by the way.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit, Peter.
Right,
I'm not
sorry.
sure others are
What I'm saying is the president, under the Trade Act of 1974, different sections, Section 301, Section 222, 201, has declared a national emergency, and the president has the authority to assess extra customs duties on whatever products coming from whatever country. It's sole discretion of the president of the United States. So and the Trump administration, the good thing is made me much busier than I've ever been because there are more tariffs involved than there ever were before. So I'm submitting more rulings than they ever did before. So next question. And by the way, whoever wins the presidential election, I don't think these tariffs are going away. So against China.
Okay, no, there's no more questions. Next slide.
All right, next slide, yeah. All right, so again, this is showing you what a real ruling looks like. Then we put the facts, and here's now on the lower right side, the issue, and then the law and analysis. That's exactly how I write my rulings, and that's how CBP issues their rulings. So it just makes it easier for them to copy and paste into a ruling, which I want to make it as easy as possible for customers to agree with whatever position I'm advocating on behalf of a client. So next slide. And lots of analysis, lots of case law I put in here. Talks about country of origin marketing requirements, some exceptions to marketing requirements, with some case law from the Court of International Trade. It identifies some headquarters ruling letters that were issued by CBP. So I always put those in there because Customs likes to copy itself. All right, next slide. Okay, and then I got the answer I wanted. So you'll see one of them, 2 of the 3 says Customs concluded they were made in Poland, which is perfect. So, all right, next slide. Okay, that's CBP rulings. Now we're going to move to the second half, and we'll go quickly on FMC.
Okay, just before we go any further, let me open it up to the attendees. Does anyone have any questions? If so, please put them either in the Q&A or chat box.
I love questions. Otherwise, I just hear myself. So, and I love doing this. As Donna and I have known each other for decades now. I love being involved in the import-export business. It's a dynamic part of the country. I think without us, there would be no trade, and without brokers and some lawyers and forwarders, nothing would get done. So,
Everyone is saying amen.
amen. Amen. So, congratulate yourselves. All right, but there are, as you probably know, there's a lot of bureaucracy involved. You have to be licensed as a customs broker, and if you're a freight forwarder NVO, you have to be licensed by the Federal Maritime Commission. So who has to be licensed? FMC uses the term Ocean Transportation Intermediary, OTI, and they break that down into freight forwarder, international freight forwarders, and NVOCCs. So if you have an operation in the United States and you're moving cargo, you need to be licensed. A lot of companies engage as a transportation broker, and they think they don't have to be licensed, and there's a way to tattle on somebody to the FMC anonymously and get that person shut down. So people do that all the time. If you're a licensed broker following the rules, you don't want to compete with someone who's not following the rules, who's not licensed. So you may be getting an illegal kickback from a carrier. All right, next slide. Okay, so here's the definitions. Title 46 of the Code of Federal Regulations, 515.2, defines who is a freight forwarder, who is an NVO, and even carriers. So I want to make sure people know that, because if you hear somebody fits this definition and they're not licensed by the FMC and they're arranged in cargo by ocean, they're in violation, and they could be
Peter, you're breaking up again.
Oh,
It's
next
getting a
slide,
little
please.
difficult.
Next slide. Okay, more definitions. This is all the services that freight forwarding includes. Not just, issuing a booking number, but arranging for cargo transportation, cargo insurance, arranging for warehouse storage for maritime cargo. That's still a freight forwarding service that is regulated by the FMC. So even if you're involved in simple things like that, you have to be licensed by the FMC. And a lot of people are not aware of that. So I wanted to put this is right out of the FMC regulations. Even look at 13. Giving expert advice to exporters concerning letters of credit, other documents, licenses, or inspections, or on problems germane to the cargo's dispatch. That's a freight forwarding service. If that's advice you're giving to someone in the maritime world, you need to be licensed. Next slide.
Yeah, Peter, can NVOCCs provide some of these services
Yes.
as well?
It's on the next slide, I think.
Oh, okay.
Not necessarily one more, I guess. Maybe I took it out. Anyway, there's an application, as many of you know, there's an application process to become FMC licensed. You go on the fmc.gov website to complete the online form. There's a $250 filing fee with the FMC, and there's some other information. We'll find the next slide. Okay, so in this, I just took this right off the form. Have you, as the qualifying official, have you been found in violation of any violation of FMC or other law? Have you declared bankruptcy? Have you been arrested? You got to be answer yes, of course, because if that's the truth. The FMC will run your name through the FBI database, so there's no reason to hide it. But be honest with you, even if you file bankruptcy, you can still qualify to operate a FMC licensed entity. You just have to explain it somehow. Even had a legal judgment rendered for debt. If you didn't pay someone some money, they sued you and they won, you have to report that. So I want to make sure, because people think they can somehow cheat the FMC, and it doesn't work that way. All right, next slide. Okay, the qualifying individual, this is critical. Someone who owns a company, oftentimes, I'm a lawyer. I've never been in the cargo business directly, but I want to open up a freight forwarding company. I could, but I'd have to hire somebody as an officer who is the qualifying official, who has sufficient knowledge of how to make a booking and move maritime cargo. So that's critical. Next slide.
The requirement used to be 3 years experience, I
Still
believe.
is. It
Is
still
that
is.
still the same?
Yep. Okay. And so here's the general duties of an OTI or freight forwarder NVO. I want to put this. See letter J. No person may advertise or hold out to act as a freight forwarder NVO unless you are licensed. So sometimes I see in the trade journals or online all these transportation brokers who are not licensed, and I'm always hesitant about that. So one of the questions I think every exporter or importer by cargo should ask is, show me, I want to see your FMC license. What's your FMC license number? And then you can check it on the FMC website directly. Next slide. Okay, this is a big one. FMC conducts investigations all the time, and they ask for documents from the freight forwarder. And sometimes the freight forwarder, for some reason, they don't keep the necessary documentation. They have to, and they have to keep the documents for 5 years. Nowadays, you can keep it electronically. You don't even have paper. But any of the description of the documents that I've included here, any of your customers, that's a financial document you're supposed to maintain for 5 years. Okay. Next slide. Okay, financial, this gets into a big one. So let's see. So most of you have at least a $50,000 bond with the FMC, and many of you probably have now $75,000 bonds as forwarders. That's a bond money that if you commit some sort of FMC violation, the FMC turns that money over to your customer, the maritime import-export company or carrier sometimes. So that's the financial responsibility, and the FMC takes it extremely seriously. We're going to get to an example where I filed a complaint on behalf of a shipper against a forwarder and got them a bunch of money. So next slide. Okay, so there is a procedure in the FMC regulations where you can file a claim against the forwarder for NVO for some sort of negligence. And it happens all the time. And that's why it says shippers, common carriers, and other affected persons may seek payment from the bond, insurance, or other surety maintained by an OTI for damages arising, etc. So it happens all the time. It keeps FMC very busy. Next slide. Okay, so this is an example where I filed a claim with the FMC on behalf of a shipper against a freight forwarder. And in this case, it says here the forwarder had a bond of $75,000, and the FMC, through a settlement between the exporter and the freight forwarder and my client, they got back $44,533.29 from the FMC bond. They're delighted. So it may be in the course of your career that some idiot exporter or somebody involved in the maritime business files a complaint or claim with the FMC, and you get notified by the FMC. Don't panic. Call me or whoever your lawyer is familiar with FMC procedures and work through the process. Hopefully you resolve it without any adverse action against you or your company. Okay, next slide.
Peter, this question, if you have a $75,000 bond,
Yep.
and let's say 44,000 of it is used in a claim, do you have to up $75,000 again, or what do you do?
Absolutely, yeah. That's the minimum bond. So if you use it, then you're going to work with your surety and get the rest back up to 75. And because you've had it's like an insurance policy. Once you've had a claim against you that the insurance company's paid out, you're going to end up paying more money to the surety to get that $75,000 bond. Your premium might go up, or your guarantees, they might ask for guarantees from the company or from whoever owns the company. So that happens. It's all negotiable. Good question again. All right, so this is so a lot of people are not familiar with the FMC website. Again, I live on the FMC website. So here's an example, a screenshot of the FMC website where you can research about your competitors. Maybe there's complaints against your competitors or your prior employer or whoever. And you can find all that through the FMC website. You'd be surprised. Some of the major carriers have paid out millions of dollars in penalties for antitrust and other kinds of violations. It's kind of shocking what you get into. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I just asked what are the recent decisions. So here's a bunch of recent actions against forwarders and vessel operating commercial carriers. You'll see in line item 6 is a really unfortunate one. It says, received response of Dip Shipping Company, LLC. And you're going to see in a moment, that was my client, a freight forwarding operator in Miami and Louisiana, that pled guilty to antitrust violations. And the FMC, of course, wanted to revoke its license. The next slide. Here's the actual screenshot of part of it. I combined a few things. The Bureau of Enforcement of the FMC, and FMC only has one main office in Washington, D.C., just off Capitol Hill. It's a nice office. Been there for 30 years. They have a legal department. They have a licensing department, and they have an enforcement department. And the enforcement department is the section that is involved in suspending or revoking licenses. So in this case, the summary shows that Mr. Roberto Dip of Dip Shipping pled guilty in the Southern District of Florida, it's federal court, for antitrust violations. So next slide. And this is part of the decision letter from the FMC administrative law judge. The way it works is the Bureau of Enforcement sends the licensed entity a letter saying, we don't think you should be a licensed entity with the FMC. We plan to revoke your license, effective whatever date. If the licensee does nothing, the license is revoked. If the licensee thinks that the FMC is wrong, they can challenge it, and they ask for a hearing before an administrative law judge who's assigned the case. That's an independent judge. Everything's done virtually. You generally do not have an in-person hearing like a trial. You do everything through electronic submissions. Or on the website. Our argument in this case was Mr. Roberto Dip, but he sold the company to someone else who was not involved in any prior wrongdoing. And I was saying that someone else is qualified, is not involved in any legal activity, and the revocation of the license should not be effective because it's basically a new entity. And the FMC had challenged that. And the administrative law judge agreed with the FMC and said it didn't matter. This person, who's the president of the company, worked for the company while it pled guilty, while the illegal acts took place, and doesn't have the proper character to operate an entity that's licensed by the FMC. And unfortunately, that company is now in business, but no longer operates as an FMC entity. It's not involved in all those services I described earlier. So it's unfortunate. So that's the end of that case. And it's a good lesson for people because even an employee of a company who later on joins another company is still tainted by the illegal activities that occurred at the prior company. So we'll have more, I'm sure FMC will have more to say about that as time goes on. So now you've seen how to make ruling requests, you've seen what rulings look like, you've learned how to research on cross, you know who to submit the ruling request to, how long it takes, what information to put in there, you know who should be licensed with the FMC, how to submit your application for a license, what FMC is looking for. And Donna was right, not only is it 3 years of experience, but you need 3 references, 3 independent references of someone who can say they know you, they've worked with you, and you are very familiar with the maritime cargo business. A lot of times just because you have a license doesn't mean you keep the license. There are lots of suspension and revocations that occur all the time for violations. And that's pretty much it. So I appreciate the time. It took 51 minutes. So any questions or comments?
I haven't seen any come in. I'll open it up for the attendees. If you would like to send anything in the Q&A or the chat box, we'll be happy to ask Peter while you have him. He's a plethora of information, so ask him anything you want while we have him.
We love doing this, Don and I together. And Renee, I think you're on the phone as well, and I know. So it's a great business we're in. You know, every time I go to the supermarket or a department store, I'm wondering, where are things from? Where were they made? And my wife still thinks I'm a little odd by doing that. I can be at dinner. I'll flip over a plate because I want to know where the plate was made, or where that fish came from. So I think it's a magical business that we're in. Still thrilled to do it after 30 years. Interacting with all the federal agencies and their changing missions is interesting, especially now. And I'm excited to help. You know, brokers and forwarders are how I get business, frankly, because you are the first ones who know something went wrong. If a shipment's on hold, the broker or the forwarder knows it before the importer and the exporter know it. And the broker and the forwarder have the unique ability to direct their client, saying either don't worry about it, or I think you need to get a lawyer right now. And by the way, I know this guy. So it's fun. It's a fun business to be in.
Hey, Peter, we do have a question.
Yeah.
What is one of the common reasons why an FMC license gets revoked?
Probably there's also reasons. It's amazing how technical FMC can be. I mean, you have to have your FMC license and all your paperwork. But mostly it's because there's a complaint by one of your customers. That your customer, maybe you received commission from a carrier and you didn't disclose that to your customer. Maybe your customer kept calling you or emailing you, where's my cargo, and you failed to respond. Something simple as that. Maybe you overcharged the customer and the customer sent that invoice to the FMC. Maybe the customer hired you to move a cargo, but you as the forwarder actually used another forwarder to move the cargo. You have to disclose that to your customer. A lot of forwarders don't. So all of those are easy basis for the FMC to get involved with a complaint. Those kinds of complaints generally are resolved if it's your first violation, informally or with a penalty, not a revocation. A revocation usually occurs when there's a serious violation of law. Obviously, engaging in conspiracy to commit antitrust with other forwarders is an easy one for FMC to say, that's it, that's too serious, we can't slap a penalty on this person, we're putting them out of business.
Peter, there is a resolution service by the FMC called the cards.
Yeah.
Is that for shippers and consignees only, or is that also for OTIs?
It's for OTIs as well. If you are an OTI and you want to complain against anybody who's licensed, so if you want to complain against another forwarder or MVO or another carrier, that's a way to file an informal complaint. It's an informal resolution. You get an attorney from that office on the phone to act as a mediator. I've done this many times. They mediate the dispute between either the shipper, the carrier, the forwarder, the carrier, and hopefully they're able to assist in resolving whatever the difficulty was. Informally, there's nothing that gets put on the FMC website. There's nothing that's reported in the Federal Register. So it's an informal resolution. Then there's the whole formal process. But I recommend the informal process, and my clients use it on a regular basis.
Generally, how long does the informal process take?
Well, first, it costs nothing, so that's nice. It's serviced by the FMC. You're entitled to have your attorney participate if you want. It's not required. The process depends on the nature of the problem. I would say typically a month. You usually resolve the problem in a month. If not, the FMC assigned attorney says, listen, we're not going to be able to resolve this. You can either forget it or you can file a formal complaint.
And typically, how long does that formal?
Usually 30 days. All good questions. Thank you.
Okay. We don't have any more questions.
Well, I appreciate the time and attention from all of you. you know how to reach me through the AIFBA, through Donna, whoever, and look forward to assisting you. There's no dumb question. People call me all the time and say, I have a dumb question. I said, that's not dumb. That's a great question. So I'm here to help any way I can. I look forward to seeing you all in person in Atlanta sometime. As soon as possible, it would be good for all of us.
Peter, on behalf of the AIFBA board, as well as all of the membership, thank you very much for your time today. It was an excellent presentation, a lot of good information shared, and I'm sure that we'll be able to use it going forward.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, all.
Thanks, everyone. Y'all have a great day.
Take care.